Hey guys, and welcome to the Hobby News. All right, well, a big week this week. We've had the celebration of 35 years of Warhammer 40k, and a lot of previews, a lot of interesting information came out this weekend, or last weekend, and a few more goodies over the last couple of days. So it's been pretty interesting for GW. We're coming into the end of, I guess, 9th edition and the sort of the end game content before 10th edition drops, which I'm assuming is sometime mid next year. And we're seeing some new revelations, I guess, and a storyline and some interesting choices from them in terms of, I guess, products and so on, and how you interact with 40k, which is kind of interesting. We'll take a quick look at that. The main thing we're going to look at today is some of the reveals, the minis, because they're the most important thing, right? And a couple of the new ones that were previewed on some of the Warhammer articles over the last couple of days. But we'll start with this Arc of Omens, which is essentially the end game content for 9th edition, I assume. And we're seeing, obviously, it'll be a progression of the storyline. So we'll come down here and take a look. But basically, we've got a sort of, I guess, the next step. And I'm assuming that this will coincide with 10th edition and whatever happens with that. We'll take a little brief look at what they say about it. So let's see, we've got this. So with the ruthless advance of Harken World Claimers Armada through the Neckmund Gauntlet, one of the very few safe passages through the, I'm not going to say that word, forces of chaos are nearing their goal. Only a few faltering obstacles stand between Abaddon, the Despoiler, and supremacy over the entire Imperium. Yep, okay, cool. So this looks like some sort of like last stand or some sort of fight back. So we've got in Arc of Omens, next major narrative leap for 40k. Okay, so we are actually moving the story forward, which is nice. With his forces spread across war zones at Vigilus, I'm not going to say that word, and beyond, Abaddon needs one good knockout punch to destroy the Loyalists once and for all. The arrival of a mysterious ally provides the break he needs, and work begins in his new battle fleet. Okay, so we'll talk about this in a second, but there's hints obviously at what the next thing's going to be and what it's leading up to, and we'll see an image in a second. But everyone's probably seen it already, so I won't hold the suspense too long. But some good images. It's going to move the story forward, which is nice for 40k. It's sort of stuck in its own, like, I guess, a frozen time state, but it's nice to move it on a bit, like, I guess, Age of Sigmar, sort of moving the story forward. Hopefully not as much. We don't want to kill 40k and start again, but you know what I mean. So that's nice to see. So let's just take a look at what sort of gets revealed. So we have this image. We'll come down here, the demon in the machine sort of thing. So we're looking at probably Dark Mechanicus here and some kind of demon prince or something that's related to that, as it's just alluded that someone's come in to help Abaddon with his fleet. So that's obviously going to be some sort of Mechanicus thing, and that's really cool because a lot of people have wanted that sort of army, and I'm assuming that that's what they'll be. Either you'll get it by the end of 9th edition, or it'll be moving into 10th edition or something like that. So it's going to be an interesting time over the next sort of I guess year to see what happens with that, but it'll be nice to see the story move forward and all those sorts of things. Now, in conjunction with this, they do talk about the rules that will come for that Arc of Omens, and that it sounds like it's going to be separate from match play stuff. So they've actually admitted that we as an audience don't really like having 500 books to get all of our rules from to play, like competitive games, whether you're in a tournament or not, just with your friends. If you want to play points values, you've got to play this very, very spread rule set where you've got to buy 500 books a year and all this sort of thing just to play the game as it is right now. Obviously, you don't have to do all that to play a game, but if you want to play in the current version, you do have to actually get a lot of material, even White Dwarves as well, on top of the books that you have to buy. So it's nice to see that they've acknowledged that, and hopefully moving forward they'll start to separate out some of these things. So with this Arc of Omens, I think we've got, here we go. So we've got this boarding actions set, which is going to be all inside of hulks and so on, and you've got all these sort of pieces which are really nice. We won't go into that here, but I'll just show you it. We can see the nice image here. So the idea is I guess that they're going to create a standalone set of rules that is more narrative base that isn't required for your match play. As far as I am aware, this is the type of thing that they're trying to go for. Might end up being different, who knows, but that's sort of what they're alluding to, I'm assuming, which someone can correct me if they've got more information than me. But if they do go down this road, that'll be really great, because that'll reduce the number of books you have to buy for doing match play, and also create, I guess, a stepping stone situation. A lot of people talk about this online that play competitively or do narrative play, that sort of thing, that there's no sort of middle ground. You're either completely in the narrative play and open play sort of arena, or you're in like the full match play rules with every single thing, and sort of at the level of tournament play, and there's nothing in between. There's no sort of like points value competitive game that might be where the scenarios are more narrative focused and less about secondaries and all sorts of things like that, and more sort of, I guess, straightforward, or maybe even not very efficient kinds of objectives and so on, that make the game a little bit more fun and create focus around events that happen during the game rather than necessarily winning or losing, and some sort of like competitive points value sort of intermediary step. And something like this goes a long way to establishing that, a sort of less focused kind of competitive play. So you can do that sort of at the moment. Like if you get the cards that they have, and you set up your scenarios and everything, your objectives and all that from the cards, the open war, I think they're still called. And that gives you a way to actually just play points values with these cards, and you get a more classic feeling of 40k, like in the old days, with the way the objectives and the scenarios were in those times. But it also adds a lot of wacky little extras, things that change during gameplay. So things like, your units might get buffed, or there might be a storm of some sort, or whatever, right? So that sort of thing, I think, creates a bit of flavor and a bit of difference for the game. And it also means that from a list making point of view, you're not having to necessarily always hyper focus on efficiency and so on to get your list just right for, let's say, a competitive game. You might choose some units which are less competitive but work better for the scenario or whatever, or over a series of games you might be playing with your mates. And I feel like that zone isn't exactly sort of looked after in 40k. It's either, the two extremes are kind of looked after, but not that middle section, which I kind of feel like everyone kind of exists in the middle section. There's only a small group that are existing at the top, and or not the top, but the competitive end, and then a group at the other end, maybe not so small, but where that are more focused on sort of just having a bit of fun and enjoying that story. That middle group that kind of want it competitive, but also want to not necessarily focus all the time on efficiency, or the math of the game or so on. It's kind of a weird grey area, right? I think everyone would agree that. So this type of step where they're trying to separate out some of those things might lead to a better I guess, pathway through 40k, and ultimately, hopefully, less books that you have to buy in order to keep up with it, right? So anyway, I won't go on there, because that's sort of a whole topic and potentially inflammatory and all that, because everyone has a very strong opinion of these things when it comes to 40k and competitive play and so on. And it's just interesting to see what they're choosing, and hopefully it's not just a black and white sort of marketing move. Hopefully there's something a bit more positive behind it that might be leading to a better way to interact with 40k, leading into 10th edition, hopefully. So, we'll see what happens, but, I'm optimistic. I've worked for the company back in the day. I've talked about this before, but my experience was very positive, and the people that I worked with and around me, and I've met people from England and so on, and all those sorts of things, they're all just passionate hobbyists as far as, the immediate employees of Games Workshop. Yes, obviously there is an echelon that is more focused on business and profit and so on, and various arms of the company. But at the middle and base level, and the studio itself, they're all hobbyists, and they only want what's best for the hobby that they love, just like you and me. And that's been my experience, and so I'm assuming some of these ideas from the community that they're being influenced by is also being influenced by that group of passionate people that are working for that company, that are slowly changing the minds of certain people above that might end up making some more considered choices. Yes, you've still got to worry about a business, but there might be some choices there that might actually be a little bit more positive for our wallets. You know what I mean? That'd be really nice. But yeah, we'll see what happens. So let's move on from that. Otherwise, I'll be waffling on forever. We'll get on to some of the minis because that's the real important thing, right? So we've got this Khorne character now. This is a nice, a bit of a glow up, I guess, for Khorne. Khorne are getting a lot of new units. The Khorne Berserkers are getting updated, we've seen that, and now we're getting a character, and it's, I guess, for a miniature that really does need an update. The good old Juggernaut there has been around for a very, 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 very long time. I've been in this hobby a long time, as I said. I used to work for them, and I remember this little chunky piece of metal, and it's nice to see it retired, and we're getting a fresh plastic kit that's much more appropriate, both from a scale perspective and just a sort of a presence for Khorne players. I think that's a really nice thing. So let's take a look. We've got this guy, so we've all seen him, and it's a lovely updated model, right? It's got everything that Khorne players are going to want. I particularly like the helmet. I think that's a really nice thing. It's something that I've noticed with the updated models is they're still relatively clean. Like, when you compare them to Death Guard and so on, there's not a lot of mutation going on, but here we're actually getting a bit of extra mutation, and I really like that. I prefer my Khorne Berserkers to be a little bit more pushed and have a bit more of that chaos flavor coming through, not just trim and so on and little spikes, but warping their armor completely so that it becomes its own thing. So it's moving away from that Space Marine look, and I think here we're starting to see it. That's much better, I believe. From if I was doing Khorne, this is the sort of thing I'd want. Very much changed helmets, the armor much more gladiatorial, lots of bare flesh showing through, that sort of thing. To harken back to their origin, a little bit more of that coming through. Like, I'd really like to see, like, if I was going to do it, I'd convert them a bit so that they're far more like classic gladiator style, with a lot of mutated flesh and weird sort of warping of their armor and so on. That'd be really fun, and then these sort of helmets where you've got demonic helmets coming forward, and I reckon that would be a really fun project, and this is going a long way to showing some of the variations and possibilities you could do with Khorne, to make them more personalized, basically, just like the Death Guard range is. It's got a very, very unique look, and they don't really feel like Space Marines. That the Nurgle range is really, for my personal opinion, I mean, I love them, but it's like a 10 out of 10, right? It's got all the right things. All those updated models are the right style for Nurgle, and really make them unique. And that's what I hope to see, as we move forward for Khorne, is a really unique and characterful, individual take on the followers of Khorne, so that when you see them, you're impressed by them. You want to look at them. You want, even if you don't like chaos, you still have to admit how cool the minis are. And this goes a long way for that, I think, for Khorne players. The Juggernaut's much bigger. He's still got the classic look and design, but a little bit more imposing. I'm assuming he's much taller than the old one. If anyone's ever seen that old one, it's extremely small, but this does look a lot bigger. So yeah, all in all, I'm pretty happy with what's going on here, and I hope to see more of that. This helmet is definitely, a design direction in the right way for me anyway, for my personal tastes. I definitely like all that sort of thing. And here we go. Here's a look at the old one here. So you can see very much that this is a product of its time. Look, it was great at the time that it was done, but obviously in the modern era, this just doesn't sort of hold up when you need something more like this, right? So I think that's great that they've updated it. And now we'll move on to the Cadians. So the Cadians have got a pretty big glow up as well. There's a lot of new minis. I won't go into all of them, but this is one of the new articles that they brought out, and we've got a look at some really cool, character models. So we've got this Castellan here, and from the look of it, you've got a lot of choices, which is lovely to see. Lots of different weapon options and head options and so on, and we're getting this sort of variant here, which is very nice. But the one that I'm really interested in is this. So this is really cool. So we've got a few different options here, and a really great general, right? This sort of character, with this big Ogryn in the back. I hope they come as a set. That'll be really lovely. I don't know if they're going to come as a set, but I'm not even sure whether this Ogryn is new, but you know, just putting them together is just really, really cool. I really like it. It's definitely the sort of classic Guard look, and yeah, there's just so much story there, right, between these two, and I really like that about it. So hopefully, you know, we'll see some nice options in the kit. It is showing that there is going to be, and it does talk about that, tremendously versatile kit, so hopefully that's good. And we see, you know, a lot of cool little extras in here, but I'm assuming they'll show that as it gets closer to the time. But, you know, I just thought I'd point that out, that this is pretty fun, and bodes well for Guard. You know, you've got some really good options now. I think that's really cool, and you know, really give you some personality for your Guard regiment, which, you know, is always fun, right? That's that whole sort of, you know, almost historical kind of thing where you're adding all the little details and the squad markings and all the various bits and pieces that go into a Guard regiment, and it's fun to make up the stories and all the little, you know, auxiliary characters and so on that go along with it. Yeah, that's always been the most fun with Guard, at least for me anyway, just doing all of that stuff. So now we'll go on to the final piece of the puzzle, and we've now seen some fresh new minis for Warcry. And for Warcry, this is interesting. So they are definitely going to be moving into more of the AOS factions, because we have here a skink, and it's really cool, right? Now, I'm in split minds about this. I'm going to do a painting video on Warcry and my initial impressions. I won't talk about too much about that here. You probably see it in a couple of months. But you know, I've been also playing a lot of MCP, and there's a lot of comparisons with Warcry and MCP, you know, which I'll go into at some later stage. But you know, the Chaos Warbands are very much balanced amongst themselves, and the AOS ones, as they stand currently, are not. They're much more overpowered than the Chaos Warbands, at least from my experience playing it. And you know, this will be interesting if they can keep the rule set, you know, intact and balanced, and have these new AOS faction. Obviously, they're going to be doing new ones in line with those Chaos Warbands. Then it should be a lot of fun. I'm definitely keen on the model range, you know, updating and so on, so getting all these new minis and characterful individuals, just like you get with Underworlds. But definitely from a rules point of view and a gaming point of view, this is potentially problematic. But it does give us a whole bunch of new models, which is great, you know, and this skink is awesome, right? You know, these little blow dart things and all of that, you know, any Lizardman player or, you know, Seraphon player is going to be very happy with these. But it is going to be interesting in terms of rules and juggling all of that. So yeah, I'm not quite sure how that's going to go, but it is interesting, right? And it is a lot of fun, these models, and anyone that plays this particular faction is going to be happy with these. But it'll be interesting to see what they verse against, because this will be the next box, and that Warcry is now sort of in Gur in the jungles, a bit like the Underworld's current season as well, and so we'll see how they go with it. But yeah, from a gameplay point of view, it's, you know, could be up and down, who knows? But from model-wise, it's looking really positive. So I think we'll leave it there. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Please hit that like button, subscribe button. It really helps me out. And I guess I'll catch you on the next one.